Hello, this is Angel Kraus, and this is an overview of FACT Module C, Inquiry into Teaching and Learning. This module will span 2 to 3 months in the program, and I wanted to give you a brief overview of what the whole picture of Module C will look like. I will go into more specifics in other directional videos or videos with directions in them. First of all, the Inquiry into Teaching and Learning is a great experience to allow you to focus in on one aspect of your teaching practice that you would like to have a new perspective on, to look at with new eyes and to take some steps to change, improve, adapt that teaching practice. So the idea is that you're going to explore a teaching practice in your classroom. It can be behavior management, it can be classroom management, procedures, it can be how you assess students, how you teach writing, how you work with the students on math facts or math manipulatives. The topic of choice is of choice for you, and you can choose anything in your classroom that can be then enacted or be seen through a unit that you will be working with the students. So once you decide a topic, you will actually be developing a full unit, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let me back up a little bit here. On the screen here, you can see the brief introduction to the Inquiry in Teaching and Learning, where you're going to explore a teaching practice. You will, with your support provider, work to decide what do you want to focus on. You'll develop and implement an action plan, or an IIP, an individual induction action plan, and then you'll reflect on what evidence you collect in the process, and then you will apply what you've learned to new or in your setting, applying your new learning to future practice. As a part of the inquiry, there are a series of documents that you will work with to help you achieve the results of this whole module. The first is the IIP, or the Individual Induction Plan, and this is your starting point of developing what are you going to focus on for the inquiry. Next is the Essential Components for Instruction, which is essentially a well-outlined unit plan. The unit can span 5 days to 3 weeks, just depending on the topic and your level of instruction. Another component of the inquiry is that you will administer an entry-level assessment, and that you will start to brainstorm when you create your unit what will be your entry-level assessment to see where your students currently are. You will choose focus students that you will monitor throughout the whole inquiry. You'll develop a series of lesson plans, and some of those lessons will be observed by your support provider. Along with the observation record of the observations by your support provider, you will also analyze student work that comes out of those observation times, those lesson plans that your support provider observed. And finally, you will administer a summative assessment to your students that is related to the topic of your IIP, and you'll do an analysis of that summative assessment. After all of these 1 through 8, C1 through 8, are complete, you'll then perform a self-assessment of the CSTPs, the California Standards for the Teaching Profession, and of the induction program standards. So this is a brief overview of all the documents you'll be working with. Now let's take a look at what you will actually be doing with those documents. The first step is going to be determining the focus of your inquiry. Using the IIP, you're going to decide what area do you want to focus on. If you're in year 1, you just completed Module B and you did a whole self-assessment. In that self-assessment, you probably identified some strengths, some areas that you're really strong in, and also some areas that you might want to focus on or you might want to revisit in your teaching practice. This will guide you in developing what your focus is. Then you're going to develop a focus question. The focus question can be, how can I ensure that my students are understanding their math facts? Or it could be, how do I increase participation with my students? Or how do I work at remaining time on task with my students? Your focus question can take any shape or form that you want to. And sometimes you'll develop a pair or a small group of focus questions as well. You'll determine what CSTP elements your focus is related to. So is it related to assessment of students, planning, curriculum, developing as a professional educator? And then the next step of the IIP is you're going to kind of get an idea, well, what are my outcomes? If I'm trying to work with my students with math facts, what are some maybe outcomes that I might be able to see by the end of this inquiry? Or if I'm working with my students to promote critical thinking, what are some possible outcomes I might see? After after you determine the focus of your inquiry, which is cells 1 through 4 on your IIP, you'll develop an action plan where you'll do a series of research steps that will provide resources that you can implement in your classroom. A couple of those steps are outlined in the course for you. You'll be looking at some of the research on your given topic, and you'll also be looking for videos on your given topic. But you'll develop a series of about 5 different steps where you might consult colleagues, you might do some internet research, you're going to look at some of the research in our databases, and you'll also look at a video. So that you'll develop an action plan. How am I going to learn about this topic, and what can I then take into my classroom? After you've developed your the first part of your IIP, then you'll start preparing for instruction. So whatever your topic of your IIP is, it's going to be embedded into a unit of instruction. So say if you are working with helping your students develop proficiency in their math facts, then your unit on that would be, how do I get my students to improve in their understanding, in their accuracy, and their quickness of completing their math facts. So that idea from your IIP is then going to be embedded in a unit. The unit will include an entry-level assessment as stated before, and this is where you will actually choose your focus students. In that unit, you'll develop a series of lessons. It may be 3 lessons, 5 lessons, 10, 15 lessons, but you only actually have to write up 3 of those lessons. Those lessons will be completed in your Dropbox document, and your support provider will be able to look over that. Oh, and just to mention, your support provider is going to be guiding you through every step of the way. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure, talk with your support provider. Touch base with them weekly. They are experts on helping you develop an IIP and helping you look at what action plan can I develop that will show the most benefit in my classroom. So after you have your action plan in place, you've developed the unit in preparing for instruction, then you will have some observations that your support provider will work with you on. So you'll actually write out 3 lesson plans. They will observe 1 to 2, normally 2 of those lesson plans, and you guys will discuss or have a post-observation reflection time where you actually analyze the student work. And then after that, the observations, you will actually administer a summative assessment in your unit. And then you will analyze, how did the students do? So you're giving an entry-level assessment. You will be working with them on a series of lessons, and your support provider will observe some of those lessons. You'll be giving a summative assessment, and then you're going to reflect and apply. Reflect on, how did everything go in the unit? How did your strategies, how did your implementation of your action plan within the unit, how did your ideas in the unit support your students? And then at the end of the reflection, you'll be moving into the next module, which is Module D. So this is an overview, and again, this is just the big picture. A lot of the details and the nitty-gritty will be outlined in further videos, but just understanding that you're going to be determining an area of focus, developing an action plan for gathering information on that focus, and embedding that focus into a unit in your classroom. Implementing the unit, including an entry-level assessment, progress monitoring along the way in your lesson plans, and a summative assessment, is kind of the big picture of the inquiry. And again, it's a 2 to 3 month process. So I think that going into it, one of the biggest things to think about is, when am I going to be implementing this unit? So make sure that you're in touch with your professor for the 714A course, and make sure that you have an idea of when you're going to be implementing the unit, because that often helps drive what your focus of the inquiry is. All right, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please let me know.